Welcome back to Market. Trinidad and Tobago is known for its rum and for its fine cocoa and coffee beans. The SMAKS luxury group also wants this country to be known for its tea. Join me now as I chat with Kiran Akal of SMAKS luxury group about the company's innovative line of fine bespoke teas and its newly developed Chai Rum, the first Chai Rum in the world. SMAKS has a very long history, starting as a flower and gift shop with your mom some 31 years ago. It's now SMAKS Luxury Group West Indies. Tell me that story.
Sure. Well, we're actually sitting at the original SMAKS boutique where my mother started 31 years ago, and that's part of the reason I asked you to come here today. I've worked in creative entertainment, particularly in immersive entertainment and brand experiences for the last 22 years in the United States and in Europe. And I came back on holiday to visit my mother 2 years ago, and she was thinking about selling the business. And I thought, you know, there's something wrong with the concept of her just disappearing after putting 31 years into the company, and perhaps that there was a way that we could do something with it. That sort of led to the idea that what we should do is we should transition from being an importer and a retailer of luxury goods into a manufacturer and exporter of luxury goods. The question was, where would we find the idea for that? And in a conversation with my sister during the Christmas holidays, we began talking about various things, and I was having a cup of tea, and she said to me, "You drink so much tea, maybe you should open a tea company." I had a sort of eureka moment and went, "Oh my goodness, it's a brilliant idea," because of the diaspora of the West Indies and the fact that the whole world of tea collided here. And also because tea provided an opportunity to exploit one of the most wonderful resources of the West Indies, which are the agro-products, flowers, fruits, spices, molasses, sugar, and rum.
And so the line of SMAKS bespoke teas was born.
Yes, it was. We started off originally with 7 blends, and we're now 12 blends of tea, which is quite a large amount of growth in just 24 months.
What is so unique, though, about SMAKS teas?
Well, you know, tea is a very, very, very specialized industry. I think tea has sort of acquired a bad name because of the commercialization of tea, the industrialization of tea. A lot of the brands that sell teas sort of all of the cafes and bars that you see all over the world, the little tea bags with a staple, are selling a grade of tea that's known as fannins. This is the actual dust that's left from the actual real process of creating tea. Real tea, really fine tea, is a very sophisticated craft, not an industry. It's a sophisticated craft that has its closest relative in the industry of wine. Tea really deals with the idea of these leaves that are steeped into water, infused into water, to create very, very complex aromatic infusions that are very beautiful, and of which no two are really alike. So it's one of these sort of types of industries, one of these sorts of crafts where there is no limit to the interpretations that you can make on it. And the West Indies provided us with an opportunity to look at the fact that the whole world of tea came together here. Most of our diaspora come from India, China, or Africa. These are 3 of the largest tea producing places on earth. And in addition to that, they came here and found here the spices, the citrus, the nutmeg, the cocoa, the sugar, and these things blend beautifully with tea. So here we are in the West Indies, bringing the leaves from the east and finding the flowers in the west that we could put together as sort of a handshake product between the East Indies and the West Indies.
It's definitely a very interesting supply chain.
Yes, it is.
An international supply chain.
It is.
That culminates in the West Indies.
Well, I like to think of SMAKS as being the leaves of our history, because in a way it's about the voyage of the leaves across the water in 2 directions. And if you think about it, you know, a lot of our diaspora traveled so far to get here, and they found these other leaves here, and then we marry them together in this very, very unique collection of teas that we hope to sell globally.
And I know you were telling me about your brand mark.
Yes.
And how meaningful it really is.
Yes.
Would you like to share the explanation?
Sure.
The story?
Sure. I mean, one of the things with branding and marketing is that if you want to successfully sell a luxury brand, an identity, an identifying mark is one of the most important things that you can develop. And we chose to really investigate what we were about, what we would want to use as a symbol to represent a luxury West Indies brand, and how we could embody the two or three things that we thought were important. First of all, the idea of luxury. Secondly, the idea of nature being related to the agro industry and to leaves and to tea. And thirdly, the idea of something that was precious. We worked with a local design group of very talented people at the Above Group under the direction of Gareth Jenkins. And as a creative director myself, we had a very, very good initial start point. The logo represents, it's born from looking at the fretwork of the houses that we have in Trinidad, the gingerbread houses and the fretwork. In the center of the logo is a double infinity sign that comes from an inscription from the Taino Indians that was found on the rocks here in Trinidad. It actually represents the god of nature, the medicine god. And if you look deeply within the logo, you will see that there are two hummingbirds up near the top on the right and left of the symbol. And just on the outskirts of the two hummingbirds, there are two fishes. And this comes from the idea that the deeper you look into the leaves, the more that you will find. You can read your history, you can read your stories in the leaves themselves. We chose the color yellow to represent the sun and also to represent the idea that the West Indies was the place where there was a search for El Dorado, for gold. That's the story of the symbol.
Very interesting story. How would you describe SMAKS' typical customer? Is there a typical customer?
You know, 31 years ago, yes. 31 years ago, there was a typical customer. I would say that you were looking at people that were very affluent, very educated, with high expendable incomes. But what has been very interesting is that as we've gone on, we've tried to sort of demystify the idea of luxury. I think that luxury is not just about being able to have a lot of money to spend on something. Luxury is also being able to take time for yourself, or to look after yourself, or to celebrate somebody else, whether it's your grandmother or your sister. And luxury should be within the grasp of everybody, whether it's in a small, tiny tin of tea or in a large, big silver bowl. And what we did at SMAKS was that we tried to, with the importation side, look at getting things in that would be within the grasp of many people, whether it was a smaller item or a larger item, so that everybody could celebrate through a fine object or giving somebody something that's represented something. This is particularly true of the teas, that they are within the grasp of most people. And so as a result of this approach, what we found was that the people that came into the store broadened dramatically, particularly in the last 5 to 10 years as we made this change. And we have people who come from all walks of life that come into the store. We treat every single customer as if they're special, because they are. And we feel that if you care enough to want to live gracefully or to give something graceful to somebody, then you deserve every bit as wonderful a treatment as we would give to anybody else.
What has been the response of your older customers or your loyal customers to the introduction of the teas?
Really amazing, really fantastic. The customer loyalty at this shop is particularly wonderful. I think the reason for that is that what you're really looking at here is a single operating boutique, 700 square feet in size, run by one lady for 31 years. When you have that, you just don't have a shop. You actually have a social meeting place where lots of people come and they'll end up coming to buy something. They spend 2 hours. So you find that these are customers that have watched us as children grow up from age 8 and 10, helping our mother out in the shop, to where we are now. And the customer loyalty has been just tremendous, and the response to the teas, you know, beyond anything one can ask for. Amazing.
What types of marketing and promotions do you do?
That's interesting. Because of the size of the business, we don't have the kinds of budgets that would normally be associated with running a large advertising campaign, which is what people would do. And I think that's another interesting thing with this. We've worked very closely with the Caribbean Export Development Corporation. We joined the Trinidad and Tobago Manufacturers Association. We are being helped by the Ministry of Trade. We've entered competitions. We've entered and won the UKTI Breakpoint competition in Grenada, the first winners. We entered and we won Ideas to Innovation, the first Ideas to Innovation in 2012. And we have participated through some of these organizations that we're members of in design exhibition shows or in consumer trade shows in different parts of both the Caribbean and abroad. What this does is that it brings the element of public relations, advertising, and outreach to the company. We have gained a lot of exposure through publications, magazines, interviews, and people coming to us because we have access to these types of platforms, much as we're doing today. I mean, this sort of thing is very helpful to a small entrepreneurial company that's trying to make it. And we're just getting to the point now where we can actually go into print advertising or media advertising, which is terrifically expensive. But we really feel that there's nothing better than word of mouth, events where people can actually taste the product and see the product, because experiences, and participating as much as we can in real life with people, as you know, in as many ways as we can.
Do you also use social media?
Yes, right now we're using Facebook, and we started off with Facebook specifically. I mean, you know, it was a strategic move. As the company grew from one island, just Trinidad, to Trinidad, Tobago, Barbados, Bermuda, St. Thomas, and now Miami, what we decided to do was use Facebook to begin to post to our clients and bits and pieces of news and show them the types of places and venues and experiences where the tea was being used. And this was to also build a brand credibility. If we're going to go into the major export markets, and we're going to go into London, or we're going to go into Germany, then by the time we get there, there would be a record, a digital trail of this company that has sort of blazed its way across the West Indies and into Europe because of its quality. And that speaks volumes. You know, we had things like a letter from the Queen that came from Buckingham Palace, and that did us no end of good. I mean, it made marketing in Miami so easy.
I can only imagine.
Yes, yeah. And so, you know, now we're going to go into a full website. We're going to go into a retail website within the next 2 to 3 months, and we're going to look at, we're going to possibly look at Twitter. I'm not 100% convinced about Twitter for us, but we're going to look at it.
Let's talk about another exciting product that's uniquely Caribbean that
Yes.
you've just launched, your
Yes.
Chai Rum.
Oh, yes. That's, we're really excited about this. Chai Rum, I mentioned the Ideas to Innovation competition, which was hosted by the Ministry of Planning and Sustainable Development.
Council for Competitiveness and Innovation.
Correct. And we entered this in 2012. I was on an aeroplane reading a book that my sister-in-law gave me, and in that book was the mention that the Dutch East India Company had written down in about 1665 that the combination of tea with rum was particularly delightful. And I thought, wow, that's a really, really interesting thing. I mean, I wonder what it really tastes like. And got back to my home and started tinkering around in the kitchen and made a kind of a toddy. And I did realize right away that the taste profile of this was just super. It was incredible. So we applied for the IDIS Innovation Grant, and we won. And we then embarked upon a one-year process of finding out how to evolve, how to innovate in the industry of rum. For such a broad industry, innovation is surprisingly scarce on the ground. You got flavored rums and so on. This is not a flavored rum. This is going into something that is processed, where the notes of the tea leaves, floral notes, are really, really chemically, fused with the rum. And the result is a drink that is just exceptional. It is elevating rum to the point of almost a cognac or a brandy. And the flavor notes and the texture of it itself are very, very beautiful indeed. I think you had an opportunity to see it at the TIC.
I did.
Yes, yeah, and it created quite an uproar.
Yeah, I tasted it too.
The interesting thing about this as well is that it is the first and only chai rum in the world at the moment.
Do you have plans, therefore, to patent it?
We're looking at that, yes. In fact, we're working on right now looking at the parts of the process that we are responsible for to see whether or not we can patent the whole idea of it.
You mentioned that you attended the Trade and Investment Convention
Yes.
earlier this month.
Yes.
What was that experience like? Was it beneficial?
Absolutely. I was first at the TIC 2 years ago at the invitation, which came 24 hours before it opened from Caribbean Export Development. And I went with one shelf. I had one shelf, 7 tins of tea in a teapot. And it was great, and people met me and they looked at the teas, and I thought, fine, it was wonderful, and a lot of traffic. But this year, we were invited by the Trinidad and Tobago Manufacturers Association. First of all, I have to say to any business person out there that's trying to manufacture in the country that I personally find myself incredibly impressed by them as an organization. They put together a room that was called the VCD, which is the Value Chain Development Room, and in it they put small to medium enterprises together that could possibly collaborate, so packaging, labeling, and then production of consumable goods. We went into that space and made an effort to continue to reinforce our brand symbology and to go green. And I would have to say that the response and the traffic was nothing short of absolutely amazing for us. So I recommend it highly to anybody. It's a great experience.
I understand that there's already a waiting list for the Chai Rum.
Yes, that's one of those things, I am still fascinated by. I mean, I'm very pleased. I really believe in my product. I think I told you earlier before we started filming that one of the things about this company is that I'm doing it out of pure joy and pure love. And I'm convinced that that somehow, by taking this approach, that it's getting into the products. We have a very limited release of the rum in Trinidad, very limited. We are already going into St. Thomas in the US via, and a large bulk of it was bought by an American distributor for that purpose. And by the time we got to the second morning, we realized that we could be running out of rum, and we began to have to create a reservations list for the next run of the rum. So we have quite a large waiting list, and it continues to grow today.
Wow.
Yeah.
So if any of our viewers are interested in getting their hands on this Chai Rum,
yes,
who do they have to call?
They have to call SMAKS. They can call SMAKS at the Carlton Savannah, which is 621-0699, or they can call SMAKS at the Valpark Plaza, the original boutique, at 663-3097. But they can also send an email to info@smaks.com. And when they send that email, if they request any information on the company or if they request to be on the list for the Chai Rum, we'll get back to them.
How do you recommend the Chai Rum be served?
It has to be served neat. The furthest that I would allow it to go, really, I mean, everybody's free to do what they like, is to serve it over some ice. But really, it should be served neat, preferably in a brandy glass or brandy snifter, and it should be enjoyed in a great deal of relaxation. That's how you should do it.
So 12 exciting tea blends. Which one is your favorite?
You know, when people ask me that, I always say, shucks, you know, I have to say what's really my favorite. But to be honest, I love Tobago Afternoon. And what's kind of ironic about that is that it's an evolution of the concept of an Earl Grey, which is a tea with oil of bergamot in it. Never liked Earl Grey in my life. And I started to experiment with how I would make a better Earl Grey if I could. And we started with the leaf, so it's more Darjeeling based rather than a heavy Assam base. We did give it a little body with the Sri Lankan black. And then we added, instead of just oil of bergamot, the actual petals from the tropical orange flower. And it's divine. So I drink it every day.
So we've got the teas,
yes,
we've got the Chai Rum. Are there any other new products in the pipeline?
Oh yes, we are about value innovating with tea. And we are about looking at how what we do in the West Indies can change the world of tea, write a new chapter in the story of it. Very interestingly, I've just met with the Hotel and Tourism organization here in Trinidad, and we, collaborating with them, I met with lots of the students and did a lecture on tea. Wonderful reception from people who want to be chefs and cooks and bartenders and mixologists, etc. And from those meetings, we began to realize that there are unplumbable opportunities in terms of where we could go with tea. So I think if you kind of just use your imagination a little bit and imagine that we're tapping into all of this sort of creative thinking, particularly from a younger generation within Trinidad and Tobago, we've got a lot of exciting ideas on the table, and we hope that almost on an annual basis we can introduce something that's very, very exciting in terms of product.
We've come to the end of this week's episode of Market to Market. Thank you for staying with us. We hope you enjoyed the show. Let us know by connecting with us on Facebook and Twitter. I'll see you next week. Take care.